Hey folks, today we're doing a bench review of the Smith & Wesson M&P Bodyguard 380 ACP. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to the 9mm Tuesday edition of Get on Target with Linc. Today we are going to do a bench review of the Smith & Wesson M&P Bodyguard with the Crimson Trace laser. Before we get to it, every time we do a weapon appraisal here on Get on Target with Linc, we're going to be evaluating it based on three different categories. The first one being the features of the weapon. What does it do? How does it do it? Etc. The second is, what's the best use of that weapon? What was it designed to do? What's its most effective use? And number three, is it an appropriate weapon for a beginner? Would it be, for example, a good first gun to buy? We're going to hit all three of those categories, but the first one are the features. When you first receive your Bodyguard 380 ACP, it's going to come in this soft case, which is very useful for traveling and transporting to and from the range. When you open it up, you'll see that the weapon is inside, and there's this small area over here for a second magazine. Your weapon will come with two magazines. Mine did not, and that's going to be the topic of conversation on our 22 short Thursday version of Get on Target with Linc, but we'll leave that alone for now. I only got one. Let's tune in on Thursday to see what happened. But anyway, she's in this case. Now we're going to take her out of the case, put the case aside for now, because we're talking about the weapon itself. So this is the Smith & Wesson Bodyguard. Now, this is a 380 ACP. Now before we go any further, we're going to make sure we have a safe weapon. We have an empty magazine, we have an empty weapon. Yep, she's safe. Now, the Smith & Wesson Bodyguard is a double action pistol. Double action means, remember, this is for beginners. If this is too beginner for you, stay tuned, we'll get to something else in a minute. But this is a double action pistol. That means that when you're pulling that trigger, it's actually doing two actions. The first thing it's doing, and you can see it in the back, it's cocking the hammer. Can you see the hammer coming back? And then it released it. So those are the two things that that double action pistol is doing. It's cocking the hammer, and then it's releasing the hammer. Double action. Now that comes in handy because if you happen to shoot the weapon and you have a light strike, meaning that the weapon doesn't go off when you pull the trigger, you'll be able to pull the trigger a second time because you're cocking the hammer, not the action of the slide going back cocking the hammer. So that's the nature of a double action pistol. Obviously, the gun is very small. Now you see it, now you don't, okay? Very, very small. There's some advantages to that for its best use. We'll talk about that again a little bit later. This also has a set of steel sights on it. And the steel sights are very bare bones. You will see that they're somewhat difficult to acquire. Well, for me anyway, it's 62. These are very difficult to acquire. Can't see them very well. Very simple, blacked out steel sights. The back sight is adjustable for windage, meaning you can move it side to side. You can't move it up or down, but you can move it from side to side. That's windage. So if it's not zeroed in, if you're shooting right or left, you'll be able to adjust that. But it's not easy. You will need a special tool to adjust the sight on this. It's not going to be as simple as applying an Allen key or a Phillips head screwdriver. it's going to be a lot more involved than that. So this is going to be a little bit difficult. And mine came in and it was not zeroed in well and requires adjustment, which I'll be getting to soon. This is going to, as I said, come with 2 magazines, or should. These are 6-round magazines, and they have the windows in them so you can tell if you've got all 6, if you've lost count up to 6 as you load it. So you'll have 2 of those. The Crimson Sight laser, you'll see these red dots on the weapon on each side. When I take my appropriate grip, I can reach that with either my index finger, or my thumb can also apply the pressure to turn it on. So I can get to it from either side. That's a good feature. Now, the way that it works, I'm going to show you here. When I hit the button one time, you'll see that the laser comes on. If I hit it a second time, it starts to blink. I'm going to do that again. So off. The first button, the first press of the button is going to activate the laser in a continuous fashion. The second press of the button is going to make it flash. The advantage to the flashing laser is in a daylight situation, the flashing can make that a little bit more visible, can make it easier to acquire. The third press on the button turns it off. These presses are deliberate. You're not likely to hit this accidentally and turn it on. You're going to do it with intent. It's easy to do, but it's not easy to do accidentally. It's a well-designed laser. I'm kudos on this one. They previously made the Smith & Wesson M&P Bodyguard as just the Smith & Wesson Bodyguard. The M&P is a family of weapons from Smith & Wesson, and they have done some very modest upgrades to this to make it fit into that family a little bit. All of the other M&P weapons in the Smith & Wesson line are striker-fired weapons, and this is a double-action pistol. So it's not really a direct relative of those weapons, but the upgrades that they did do, the fish scaling, can you see it on the back of the slide? There's that serration on it. There, let's probably pick it up there now. But that serration is called fish scale, and it's designed to make it easier to grip the back of the slide. The fact is that those fish scales are so modest, they're not all that aggressive. They don't really help that much, but they keep it in keeping with the rest of the M&P line, so they've put them on. For me, in this case, they're more cosmetic than they are practical, but they're there. The other thing that they've done with the M&P model is the texturing on the grip is a little more aggressive on the M&P, making it easier to get a good solid grip on. It's not so aggressive that this would be uncomfortable if it was next to your skin. It really kind of hits a sweet spot. I think they've done a really good job with the stippling on the grip. So that's the other upgrade. The third one was they've upgraded the laser to the Crimson Trace laser. And the Crimson Trace is a good, solid quality laser that's quite dependable, and that's a nice upgrade. Another thing I'll point out on this feature-wise is the manual safety, which you'll see right here. Now, the manual safety is a bone of contention in the gun world. A lot of experienced shooters don't like them. They think they are superfluous and they are unnecessary and they're silly and etc. Others swear by them. It's an additional layer of safety when you have it in concealed carry. If you have it in appendix carry, some people really want that additional security and confidence that the weapon is safe as it's pointing toward their nethers. But the safety is a little bit stiff to engage, to turn the safety on. However, I find it very easy to disengage. getting with the crook of my thumb right here, it's very easy for me to slip it off. Not a challenge at all. I come down on the side of the argument of I'm a big proponent of the manual safety. The reason I'm on that side of the argument, if you don't like a manual safety, leave it off, and it's just not there. Just ignore it. But in a certain situation, even those purists that don't want to have them there might be some weird scenario that you can concoct that having a manual safety might be beneficial. And it's there if you need it. And if you don't, leave it alone and ignore it. That's where I come down. You will make your own decisions as you gain more experience as a shooter, and people will make their arguments on both sides of that coin. That's mine. But the manual safety is right there. This is the slide release. And on many guns, the Glocks and many of them, it's very, very simple to release the slide. No parts come off of the gun. It's just a easy slide release, and the thing, you click the trigger and it comes right off. This doesn't work that way. With this, what we're going to do, I'm going to do it for you, and this may take a couple of minutes. We're going to lock the slide back, and the slide release right here, what we have to do is kind of get our fingers under it, get it turned down. Can you see how it's moving down? And we got to keep sliding it, and I find, they say to go to 6 o'clock, but I find it has to go to almost 9 and then back, and then it releases, and then it comes out. Now once that happens, all we have to do is release the slide and it comes apart, and we are field stripped, okay? That's the easy part. What's more difficult is when we, and while we have it apart, this is a polymer lower. Most of the guns, not all. The Kimbers, for example, are all steel and so forth, but this is a polymer lower. The chassis is polymer, the slide is steel, okay? So, here's where it gets more challenging though. When we go to put it back together, we're going to put the slide on and lock it back. Now what we have to do is put the pin back in that little hole. And what you'll find is it's going to take some monkeying to get it to go in. I have found that I have to kind of hold it back a little bit as it just clicked in, and then you turn it. This is probably not going to be very clear on this because I have to cover it so badly because I got a monkey with it. But the bottom line is that will go back in. You have to kind of finagle it a little bit to get it to go in. And I find I have to pull the slide back just a little bit to get it to click into its flat position before I turn it back into, from the 6 to 9 position back to this 3 o'clock, where it's now locked the slide back in place. I can release the slide, and she's ready to shoot. Little bit of a challenge, especially if you're a new shooter. That's gonna drive you a little crazy at first. I will tell you that this is going to get easier as you do it more often. It's going to become simpler to do. Not only because of familiarity, but the parts are going to become more friendly to each other as well. So that will get easier. But in the beginning, it's a pain. So those are the features of the Smith & Wesson Bodyguard, the M&P style. What's it used for? Well, I think you may have already answered that question for yourself. This is the perfect concealed carry weapon. It's tiny. It's also very thin, and you can see that here, right? Very, very, very thin design. That's important when you're talking about the printing of the weapon when being carried concealed. Printing means that the even though you're trying to conceal the weapon, it's revealed by its outline or poking through your clothes. That's printing, and the thinner the weapon, the easier it is to avoid. So good on that score. This is a 380 ACP. That's a good round, in my opinion, for a concealed carry weapon. The 380 round is a little bit smaller than the 9mm, and that makes the gun smaller too, and that just helps in concealing it and avoiding printing. So it all kind of ties together. But 380 ACP is a good round for concealed carry. The other thing you have is the laser. The laser gives you a tactical advantage in a stressful situation. If you've got it and they don't, you've got a leg up in that conversation. So the laser's a big deal. Nighttime, even during the day, really a big advantage. So concealed carry, really, really good choice for concealed carry. The double action is also an advantage in concealed carry. If you pull the trigger and you have a light strike, you can pull the trigger immediately once again and have a second chance of that going off before having to rack it and get rid of that bad round and shooting again. One of the most talked about things about this weapon on every review, every evaluation of it by anybody of any skill level is the trigger pull. This has a very long trigger pull. I want you to watch this. As I pull the trigger back, we're going to get right to almost to the top part of the grip there before I hit the sear and it clicks. It's a long trigger pull, and it measures at about 8 pounds. Mine did. Mine was 8 pounds, 13 ounces as I tested it. But that's a significant resistance to your finger, to the trigger pull, and it's a long way to go before it clicks and goes bang. So, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I am fortunate enough to never have been in a gunfight. I hope to have that on my tombstone. I was never in a gunfight. But I am told by people who have been and have experience in that horrible situation that this can be a tactical advantage. When you are in that situation, the stress is astronomical. The tension that you're feeling in your body and mind is unbelievable, and the pulsing of your blood through your body is extraordinary. Accidents will happen. With a very light trigger, with a hair trigger, you can find it going off by accident, surprising you, shocking you, and not when you were pointing it where you wanted it to be. You could have a very, very tragic situation happen with a very light trigger in that situation. The additional poundage that it requires to pull this trigger and the distance that you have to go to do it, it makes it an absolutely deliberate action. It's something you intended to do, or it's just not going to happen. And in that situation, that's probably a good thing. If a stress situation happened like that, you're not going to be firing 50 and 100 rounds at a target at a range. Your finger's not going to get tired. You're going to be talking about, on average, maybe 3 to 5 rounds that are shot in a situation like that, total, from both parties. Those statistics can be argued, but that's one set of statistics. But it's not a ton of rounds, typically. So the difficulty of pulling the trigger is far outweighed by the unlikelihood of doing it by accident. Okay, number 3, is the Smith & Wesson M&P Bodyguard a good choice for a beginning shooter? My answer to that question is a resounding no. Not a good one for the first-time buyer, particularly. There are several reasons that I say that. The first gun that you get needs to be helping you to learn the fundamentals and the mechanics of shooting properly and safely. Not being able to get a full grip on this weapon, that's the first downside. That's the basic fundamental of firing a weapon, is getting a good grip that you know how to do and you can depend on regularly, and that helps you control the weapon. This is going to work against you in learning those fundamentals. The second thing is the laser. The laser is so much fun and so accurate. Why bother learning how to aim a weapon and put around where you want to put it on target through a proper sight picture and using the weapon properly? Why bother? I got a laser. Well, a lot of people won't bother, and they're not going to be building the fundamentals, the mechanics of learning how to shoot, and this is going to lend to your laziness in that regard. So the laser is actually a negative for the beginner. Now the weapon can be purchased without the laser. This is available in several configurations, with or without the manual safety, with or without the laser, in this flat dark earth finish or all black. There are a lot of variations on the gun. But the laser is going to be a negative when you're starting out. When you're starting out, you need to learn how to shoot. That's your first job, and your first weapon should be aiding you in that job in every way it possibly can. There are going to be some really good ones that we're going to be talking about down the road, but this isn't one of them. If you do have the self-discipline not to use the laser and you're going to start learning how to shoot by using sights, the sights in this are awful for a beginner. It's very difficult to acquire the sight picture. It's all black, it's black on black, front and back. Very difficult to pick up. So this isn't aiding you in learning how to properly sight a weapon. This is working against you. Now, is this a good weapon? You bet. Great concealed carry gun. Highly recommend it. As a second or third gun, once you've got some experience under your belt and you know what you're doing, keep this on the list. This is one you definitely want to consider. But as a first weapon of choice, leave this one in the bag. Okay, that's it for 9mm Tuesday. I hope you enjoyed meeting my buddy, the Smith & Wesson M&P Bodyguard. Hope you tune in on Thursday for 22 Short Thursday, because I'm going to tell you why I only got one magazine, and there's a warning for all of us in that presentation, so tune in for that. If you got something out of this, like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell so you don't miss anything. There's a lot more coming. So, until the next time, see ya.